Welcome to your mini watercolor city skyline lesson tutorial. Get your watercolors ready because here are the instructions for this lesson. You're going to want either a half sheet of watercolor paper or a full sheet, but some kind of thicker paper is best. Something from your sketchbook would work really nicely. If all you have is printer paper, that will be fine. Just try and use a little bit less water when you are painting your skyline today. Once you have your paper ready with your pencil, you're going to want to have your city skyline reference picture handy, and you're going to work across the page from left to right. You want to have a skyline with major landmarks so that it is recognizable to the viewer. For this one, I'm doing New York City, and right here I'm starting with a little Statue of Liberty sketch. It's not perfectly realistic, it's just kind of a silhouette outline. Whatever you do, try not to make any parts of the sketch too small, otherwise it will be really difficult to paint in. I do have some very tiny areas, but I have been painting for a very long time, so I do feel confident enough in my skills to paint those in. You know your skill level and what you can do. It's always good to challenge yourself a little bit. Pick something that's like a little bit harder than you think you could do, and try it because you might be surprised at what you can create. So here's a little time lapse of my sketching. You can see I messed up a couple times, but I just kept going. And there we go. Across the page, I got my watercolor brush ready and my watercolor paints. I also have a little container of water and a paper towel, not featured, and I'm going to take my brush and wet it first, then wet the watercolor paint, and I'm going to start kind of scribble painting it in, if that makes any sense. It's called scumbling, where you kind of move the brush around and you're not exactly just trying to paint the shape in. So here I chose to start with purple for my color palette. I'm doing purple, red, and blue. Just sticking with those three colors. I know because of my color wheel knowledge that they will blend together really harmoniously. They are analogous colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So you want to choose colors that are next to rather than across from each other. Otherwise, it's going to make it a really muddy grayish brown. Unless that's something you're going for, then you really want to preserve the brightness and the brilliance of the colors. So I'm taking some water and kind of spreading it out. Again, I'm moving the brush all around in a very scribbly motion, and I'm going to work across the page. So I did purple, then I added red. So I'm trying to keep the outlines a little bit darker. And then I just kind of scribble in some random areas on the inside of the city buildings to leave them open almost to appear like windows. Now, they're not perfectly shaped out or anything like that, and that's the beauty of watercolor. So see, if you look here, I left a bunch of spots that looked like too many, so I started filling them in. And I'm going to take my next color and start adding it in there, my red, and filling in sort of random areas and kind of working across the page, but then going back and blending a little bit as I go, pulling the color up and across, always looking at the whole thing and just seeing how it's flowing together and if it's looking good or if there are things I need to change. Now, you can't erase watercolors, so as I have taught in the past, what you do if you mess up is you grab a tissue or a paper towel or even a Q-tip and just quickly absorb the puddle of color off of your paper, and that will really lighten the color and you should be able to fix it. Sometimes it takes the color off altogether. If the color is really dark, sometimes it doesn't. I usually add extra water if I mess up and then try and absorb it off. I think I did mess up one time in this painting. This is a voiceover, so I am going back and reevaluating my work at this point. You can see I'm adding water and blending across the page. This is when I started to transition to the color blue. And you can see that the blue really just gives it just a total different look. The red is super warm, and then the blue has this coolness to it. And when it mixes with the purple, it's going to create this beautiful indigo that is very pleasing to the eye. I highly recommend doing these 3 colors, but you can choose your own color palette based on the sample pictures that I gave you and decide what colors you feel drawn to and what colors you like the best. So here at the bottom of my buildings, I blurred out the color with some water. Not all cities are on the edge of water, but a lot of them are. If they're a coastal city or a city on a major body of water, you can blend it out to make it look like it is sort of a reflection, or it's just kind of blending away towards the bottom of the page. It's a really interesting effect that just is very pleasing and it looks really good. So you can try doing that. The coolest thing about watercolors that I really enjoy is you can always go back to them and add more water on your page, even if it's the next day. And you can continue working and blend out colors that are on the paper. So I've illustrated books in the past where I've done the outlines of characters or certain objects at night, and then gone back the next day and pulled the color in with some water, which is super fun. And I just think that's so interesting about them. So you can see here, I'm going back again to my red, almost creating like a pattern. So I had red to purple to blue, then back to red, just to kind of close out and frame out the edges. Now I didn't like how this was blending, so like I mentioned earlier, I took a paper towel, lightened the color, and I think then I went back over it with purple because I wasn't liking how the blue and red were mixing. They're theoretically supposed to make purple, but to me they always make like this really odd color that just doesn't look that good. But I like how having that little bit of red at the bottom that I wiped off and just leaving a little hint of it there looks really good. So I'm gonna go back and outline and then finish out my painting. So towards the end, I'm going to take a little bit of water and kind of try and blend out the bottom just to complete that beautiful blurred mist of what appears to be a reflection or water, or just kind of blurring out my picture so it fades off the page and doesn't have like a stark line. I think this painting turned out really cute. It's not a super long painting. It's quick and easy to do, very stress relieving, and it's really good practice for your watercolor skills. I cannot wait to see all of your paintings, and make sure to like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my art tutorials, or you can comment below and say how you enjoyed the lesson. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a really good time doing your watercolor city skyline.